Evening and welcome to the webinar hosted by the No Longer Three-Fifths Coalition, a group of currently and formerly incarcerated activists and community organizers fighting to build power and restore the right to vote for incarcerated people in Massachusetts. Voting rights restoration is a democracy issue, a racial justice issue, and a necessary for criminal justice reform and legal reform that gives people inside political representation and a voice in who is making decisions that affect their lives. The purpose of bringing everyone together this evening for this event is to learn why voting matters from the perspectives of people from the inside. Right now, we're going to have a couple of videos that we want you to watch from Justin and Katie. And Tamik Kirkland and Derek Washington is going to speak on their experience and why they have called upon all of us to assist them in making this happen, this important legislation.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your story.
Hi, my name is Derek Washington. I've been incarcerated in the Massachusetts Department of Correction for 18 and a half years, fighting for my innocence for the most part, but what really motivated me to be involved in activism is just experiencing the injustices that happen all throughout the system.
Peace, everybody. My name is Tamik Kirkland. I'm an innocent man that has been wrongfully convicted of murder and sentenced to life without parole. I've been incarcerated for about 14 years now, and I'm currently being warehoused at Susan Baranowski Correctional Center, which is a maximum security facility in Shirley, Massachusetts. I'm the co-founder of No Longer Three-Fifths Coalition, which is a group of incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals, as well as community members and organizers and organizations. We're fighting to restore the voting rights for those incarcerated.
Can incarcerated people vote? People incarcerated in county jails, pretrial, or serving a misdemeanor sentence in the House of Correction can vote in all federal, state, and municipal elections by absentee ballot, as long as they are citizens and are not incarcerated for felony convictions or voter fraud. People incarcerated in state prisons for felony convictions cannot vote in any elections in Massachusetts while incarcerated. People who are currently serving a federal sentence regain their right to vote upon release from prison. Here is a brief history of disenfranchisement.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bobby. I hope everybody's having a good evening today. I'm going to give a brief history on disenfranchisement in Massachusetts. Before I get to the next slide, I want to let everybody know that incarcerated people serving a sentence that is as a felony sentence had the right to vote until 2000. Prior to that, Massachusetts was one of the handful of states that allowed incarcerated people to vote. And what happened was, in January 30th, 1988, the Boston Globe reported that people incarcerated of life sentences at MCI Norfolk Prison are launching a vigorous voting registration drive to oppose that bill to ban the prison furloughs filed by Representative Gardeno. In response, Representative Harmon files a bill to disenfranchise people incarcerated for murder, sales of possession of drugs, rape, and other sex-related offenses. However, the bill did not pass. And just to let everybody know what exactly a furlough is, a furlough was a process that individuals that were incarcerated actually got to go home or go to the street, to the outside world to visit, whether it be a mosque, a birthday, a funeral, and they would come back inside prison. Just wanted to give a brief understanding of what a furlough was, and then I'll pass it over to Leslie.
Thank you, Bobby. Leslie Credo, founder and executive director of Justice for Housing and co-founder of the No Longer 3/5 coalition. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Continue where Bobby left off at. On August 11th, 1997, members of MCI Norfolk Lifers Group formed the Massachusetts Prisoners Association Political Action Committee to organize inside Massachusetts prisons. Their goal was to educate their incarcerated community members and their family members to ensure everyone participated in the electoral process, meaning ensuring that everyone voted in elections, to ensure like-minded legislators were chosen to govern. The very next day, on August 12th, acting governor, he dramatically held a press conference inside the National Street jail cell, announcing that he filed a constitutional amendment to disenfranchise the Commonwealth's incarcerated community. Let me simplify this. He took the voting rights away, making it unlawful for anyone serving time in Massachusetts prisons to vote. And I will turn it over to Donnie Consuelo, sorry.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining. I'm Consuelo from Cambridge Hart and part of the No Longer 3/5 coalition. On August 12, 1997, Acting Governor Cellucci holds a press conference from Nashville. Oh, all right, I was reading the wrong one. November 7th, 2000. Massachusetts residents vote on ballot questions 2 to amend Article 3 of the state constitution to prohibit people incarcerated for felonies in state prisons from voting. People incarcerated across the state vote in large numbers. However, the amendment passes the final stage with 60.3% yeas, 33.9 nays, and 5.8% of people not voting on the question. This ballot only applied to state elections, not federal or municipal. 20 days later, Governor Cellucci signs Bill 2883, prohibiting people incarcerated in state prison for felony convictions from voting in presidential and municipal elections and changing the requirements for obtaining absentee ballots.
Once again, we are here for those individuals who have lost their right to vote. Before I continue, I want to remind everyone that we are hearing from Justin and Katie, who participated in the 2019 effort to collect ballot signatures. You heard from Leslie Creedle, founder and executive director of Justice for Housing and co-founder of the 3/5 organization. Consuelo just spoke from Cambridge Hart. You heard and will hear written testimony from women incarcerated at Framingham and continued recorded testimony from our incarcerated co-founders, Derek Washington and Tamik Kirkland. Currently, there are about 6,000 people incarcerated in state prisons who cannot vote. Incarcerated people serving a felony sentence had the right to vote until 2000. Prior to that, Massachusetts was one of a handful of states that allowed incarcerated people to vote. But what happened? Voting rights restoration is a democracy issue, a racial justice issue, and a necessary criminal legal reform that gives people inside political representation and a voice and who is making decisions that affect their lives. Since 2001, there have been efforts to overturn the constitutional amendment, including litigation by incarcerated people and attempts by legislators to introduce legislation that would restore the right to vote to people serving a felony sentence. Currently, legislation was introduced in session and has made it out of committee, pending a possible vote in October. This legislation was introduced by Representative Uyterhoeven and Senator Miranda, respectively. Why does voting matter to people in prison? And we will turn it over to Leslie Creed.
Why is being able to vote important to you?
Being able to vote is essential in here. In fact, I feel like being able to vote is being able to be a part of the larger body. I always seen government as a body in which either you're a part of or you're outside of. I always seen government acting, as I said, the head being the legislature, the body being the executive branch, and the courts being the judicial branch. So when we look at a body, we look at how hands move, we look at how thoughts are processed, we look at fairness and consciousness. So if you're able to pick the people who make up that body, then it does justice body. But if you're not able to do that, then you're bound to get stomped on or assaulted by that body. So being able to pick the people who make the laws that govern these environments, govern my world, and govern the institutions that I've been a part of, then I feel like it'd be a lot more equitable, which is why I feel like it's important that everybody has the ability to participate in the political process.
Once again,
Universal suffrage is something that my ancestors fought and died for. And they fought against the government coming up with new tactics to stop non-white people from voting, like what mass incarceration has been doing for the last several decades. Since the beginning of this country, those in power have been finding ways to lock blacks out of the political process. And whatever tactics they use seem to be okay to the public until people fought against it. The purpose of the 3/5 clause that was in Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution was used to determine how many lawmakers represented certain districts. So the government counted only 3/5 of the non-free, meaning the slave population, but none of the slaves were allowed to vote for any of the lawmakers. After slavery and during the Reconstruction era, the 14th Amendment gave us citizenship and abolished that 3/5 clause. So we were all counted as individual citizens then. And the 15th Amendment enfranchised blacks, but they failed to use language to prohibit states from making laws to prevent blacks from voting. So after the amendment passed, states created black codes and revised their constitutions to create indirect methods to disenfranchise blacks all over again, like literacy tests, the poll tax, registered approval from whites. They even made like ridiculous criminal laws like vagrancy and just to re-enslave us and to stop us from voting. And whenever those methods didn't prevent us from voting, racist models like the KKK would use violence to intimidate us. So after the civil rights beat out Jim Crow, we gained universal suffrage again, and then the government invested hundreds of millions of dollars to propel mass incarceration under the mantra war on drugs. Mass incarceration is one of the biggest forms of voter suppression now. Over 6 million citizens, disproportionately black or brown, are not allowed to vote in any election, and that includes those incarcerated in Massachusetts. Right now in this country, more people are being prevented from voting than there were slaves in 1850. And remember, now we're counted as a whole, which puts more seats in office or we still can't vote for those who represent us in those seats. Political awareness wasn't on my radar when I was growing up, so I wasn't aware of the importance. But now I see that politics control everything, from the water we drink to what our children learn in school, to what happens with police officers and police brutality cases, or what district attorneys maintain conviction integrity units to overturn wrongful convictions, or even whether those incarcerated continue to be abused mentally, physically, and emotionally, or whether we go home rehabilitated and educated to be productive citizens in society. All of that comes from whether we're able to vote and participate in this process. So for those reasons and many more, voting is important to me. Not being allowed to vote is keeping me a slave to policies that don't represent me and is not putting in place programs that will help my community. I'm still a citizen in this democracy. My conviction has nothing to do with voting, so it shouldn't prevent me from doing so. By locking one out of the political process or the process that creates the laws, you're keeping us outlaws.
Once again, we just heard Derek, and now we're going to turn it over to a word from Leslie Creedle.
Yeah, I am going to speak for my incarcerated sister, Patricia, we call her Patty, who is in MCI Framingham, and she's been in Framingham for over 18 years. These are her words. I think those who are most affected by the laws of incarceration should have a say in who writes or changes these laws. Society should hear from those behind the wall who don't have a voice. The facade should be removed and let us help choose who has the control over our lives. As a future voter, Patricia cares about ending life without parole, better oversight of the mass parole board, commutations, and the right to vote for those who make the decisions about people who are incarcerated. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Right now, I am going to do a reading from Omar. These are his words. He has been incarcerated for over 31 years at Old Colony. He quotes, "Voting matters because I get a voice in choosing who represents me or who I want to represent me in the community, in my state, someone who shares similar values. If given the right, I would focus on where taxes are being spent, helping out municipalities to bring up my community in Springfield, Massachusetts. The 25 to Life bill, raising the juvenile age to 18 to 25 years old, as well as stripping away the 13th Amendment, stripping away the habitual offender law, stripping away qualified immunity from district attorneys, or breaking the law in their quest to get a conviction. Subsequently, Sean, who has been incarcerated over 30 years at Old Colony, he says, voting matters because civic duty makes you a part of society. When that is taken away, the belief that you are part of society is also stripped away. Furthermore, just because you're in prison, many people still have family who are dramatically impacted by proposed legislation. Prison should not prevent you from being present and impacting your family's lives in a positive, pro-social way. I was in high school and too immature to vote prior to being incarcerated, but did vote in prison. If given the right, the issues I care about, including criminal justice and social responsibility, character of individuals running for office. Now we will have another video.
How does re-enfranchisement contribute to improving the rights of incarcerated people in the states?
But as I said before, as we're able to be a part of the body, then that means we become stakeholders in the political process. So if we could vote and pick the people who make the laws that govern these institutions, they'd be coming in here looking at the policies that govern these institutions because they want to vote. But because we're not able to participate in the political process, then these institutions, they run rampant with dehumanization and neglecting every bad thing under the sun that can possibly happen because there's no accountability. In fact, it makes these places autonomous institutions where they can do anything. They can kill you in here, and you're only going to get the story that they report. So it's like when we have legislators coming in here looking at us and looking at conditions of confinement, and when these elections come around and they know that, okay, well, I need these people's vote to get into my position, it really emphasizes that we do have a legitimate voting bloc. It really can shift the political anatomy, not only of cities and towns, but of the state ultimately when it comes down to local elections and governor elections, DA elections, whatever it may be.
Ending felony disenfranchisement will give those of us that are incarcerated some kind of representation by elected official. Because we can't vote, we don't have anyone in office that has our interests at heart. Therefore, we don't really have any rights. Because we can't vote, most legislators don't create or pass laws that protects us. There is no legislation on classification, so the DOC do what they want with us. We're lacking educational programs. We receive horrible medical and mental health services. They disrespect and mistreat our visitors. Our loved ones pay excessive fees on phone calls just to communicate with us and support us throughout the time. And we deal with correctional brutality on a crazy level. Taser assaults, dog attacks, brass knuckles beatings, pepper spray, excessive solitary confinement, etc., etc., etc. There's no transparency. The DOC officials hold on to all of the videos and they lock us down to control the narrative, so we can't even explain what's really going on. And for an example of our lack of representation, all legislators are aware of the inhumane treatment towards incarcerated citizens. And for that reason, on that bill, Saving Black Lives had language to protect us from brutality. But the lawmakers refused to pass that bill unless that language that protected incarcerated citizens from the brutality was omitted from the bill, basically telling the DOC that they could continue to abuse all of its incarcerated citizens. That's basically because we're not allowed to vote for the lawmakers that voted on the bill. So until we're able to participate in the political process and the politicians see us as human beings and their constituents, and humane treatment is going to continue.
For people who are incarcerated, having the ability to vote goes beyond just representation and has the potential to improve the conditions that incarcerated people experience. Right now, I'm going to introduce Representative Erica Uyterhoeven of Middlesex County.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. It's really just such an honor to be here. I just want to shout out, there are over 66 people joined with us today. So this is really exciting. I want to just speak a little bit about the bill that we filed around this issue and what are sort of the next steps in terms of the legislative process and the ballot question process. So to take a step back, there are two bills that we filed. One is a constitutional amendment and the other is a legislative bill. And so there are sort of two ways we're pushing this issue forward. The constitutional amendment, the reason why we have to do that is because this is a change to the Massachusetts Constitution. And that is part of why we need to collect enough signatures so that we can ensure that this gets taken up on the ballot again and we can pass and restore the right to vote at state and general elections. So just so everyone has it too, that constitutional amendment has a bill number called H26 and S8. And I filed that with Senator Liz Miranda, who has been an incredible partner in this work. And yeah, we're very thrilled about that legislation leaving the committee, which has never happened before. That is a unprecedented first time it's ever happened. So that's really thanks to you all and the movement to fight for restoring the right to vote that you all are at the forefront of. So I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you, because bills don't come out of committee easily. And the fact that this came out of committee is extremely promising and really exciting for all of us. Now there's a counterpart legislation that is H724 and S428. This is just a regular bill like you would see in the State House. All other bills are like this. It does not involve changing the Constitution because it restores the right for incarcerated people who have a felony conviction to be able to vote in municipal elections. So municipal elections are handled a little differently. That's not in the Constitution. So that therefore we have a bill that we filed to restore the right to vote so that anyone who is incarcerated is able to vote across municipal or local elections, state and federal and general elections. In terms of what's ahead of us, this August, we're going to file language with the Attorney General to make a petition to say we want to bring this ballot question to the voters of Massachusetts. That's around that constitutional amendment. And what we're going to have to do in the fall is to collect enough signatures to get that on the ballot. So I just want to really, I'm going to say this again, but we need your help. We need help to collect signatures. We also need to make sure that we're collecting signatures across the state. No more than a fourth of the signatures collected can be from one county. So even if we get, say, Suffolk County covered or my county, which is Middlesex County covered, we need to make sure we still have others, enough signatures to cover that. So that's one, first and foremost. We're going to start being able to collect signatures in the fall. So we're really again, asking for your help with that. That's a really important step because once we collect enough signatures, we're able to then push it to go on the ballot. That said, we also need to be pushing the legislature to get this issue forward because we get it onto the ballot, but we also need the legislature to vote twice to allow it to be moving forward onto the ballot. That's just, again, changing the Constitution for Massachusetts is complicated, but by collecting those signatures, we need 1/4 of the legislature to vote in favor of moving this amendment forward. So that's going to be another part. After we've collected all the signatures, we are going to have to start reaching out to my colleagues in the legislature to ensure that they're going to be voting yes on this constitutional amendment moving forward. So really, the ballot question and the signature collection really has this twofold piece. One is that we need to ensure that we change the Constitution. The other is that, it's also really important that people understand, particularly people in the legislature understand that there's a mass movement demanding for restoring the right to vote for all people, including incarcerated people. So that's just a gist. And again, I'll just repeat the numbers again. It's H26 S8, which is the constitutional amendment. And then for the regular bill, which restores the right to vote for municipalities, is H724 and S428. And I just want to leave that with you all because I also have it asked that everyone on this webinar reaches out to their elected officials and lets them know that this is a big priority for you and that you want them to be co-sponsoring this legislation, supporting this legislation, talking to their colleagues, talking to the speaker, the Senate president, the governor about the importance of this legislation. I also just want to shout out, I know we heard testimony from Ms. Pat Olson from MCI Framingham. She actually got to speak with the governor on her visit to MCI Framingham, which is also really exciting that the governor came to one of our correctional facilities. And Pat actually told her, Madam Governor, if I had the opportunity to vote, I would have voted for you. I hope I get the right to vote and that all our sisters are able and brothers are able to vote behind the wall. So I want to just also uplift one more reason why this is so important. I see this every day as a legislator who is taking in all of these issues that Tamik and Derek talked about around like the issues that incarcerated people are facing, the fact that we don't have the right to vote have so many ripple effects, particularly in terms of us as their representative. And I'm just going to give one quick example from this week when, so it's actually just this session for like, we've started to normalize incarcerated people being able to testify at hearings. Now, that's still something that we have to ask the committee for permission for, and which is wild to me because we would never do that to people outside the wall, right? We would never tell people that, oh, you may or may not be able to testify at this hearing. Hearings are open for the entire public and are allowed to, anyone who wants to speak for 3 minutes gets 3 minutes to speak. This past week, we had the hearing for ending life without parole, as well as the moratorium on prison construction. We had gone through all of the processes. We signed everyone up on the form. We reached out to people behind the wall to ensure that they're able to speak on these incredibly important bills that directly impact them. And we had about 60 people signed up to testify this past Tuesday. And right before the hearing started, we were told that most of them will not be able to testify because they're only going to allocate an hour and a half for them to speak. Again, this is something that would never happen to the public. I sit through hours and hours and hours of testimony from the public. We would never tell anyone who has the right to vote, right, that they can't even speak. And the fact that we face these barriers for allowing people behind the wall to talk about issues and to testify on issues that directly impact them, I just uplift that as one of so many reasons why we need to restore the right to vote. I also want to add very quickly, because we did pass some legislation last session around enabling, making it easier for people who don't have a felony conviction to be able to vote behind the wall, but this actually has really created a lot more issues. There's the fact that there's so much confusion on who can and who can't vote. I've run into people even outside who had been formerly incarcerated tell me, I don't think I have the right to vote because I was incarcerated, right? There are these false narratives out there that also reduce, right, that contribute to voter suppression. And the same thing behind the wall too. There are people who are thinking, oh, I don't think I have the right to vote because I'm incarcerated, when actually they do, right? So having this like gray, this confusing system. And then I'll add one more thing. There are people behind the wall who know they have the right to vote. They submit their absentee ballot, and then the municipality that they want to vote from, where they've called home, receive that, and they're confused on how to process it. So then that's another way, right, that even if someone did through that, went through all those steps, knew they had the right to vote, may not still be able to vote because the municipality's election commission or election department didn't process their application in time or properly because they don't get many applications from behind the wall, and they didn't know how to deal with it. So I just uplift all this because, again, it's so ridiculous that we're having this, like, some of you can vote, some of you can't, and it's creating all of these issues. Even when we tried to pass legislation to protect the right to vote for some incarcerated people, and that's where we just need to say, hard stop. Everyone deserves the right to vote. Forget the some people this, some people that. No, we want to have universal voting rights for all. And that's really, that's what justice truly looks like. And that's why it's so important that we need to get this question on the ballot in Massachusetts so that we can reverse reverse this harm that we did in many of our lifetimes, as well as ensure that we get this legislation passed so that anyone can vote also in the municipal elections as well. So thank you all so much again for being here. It's really powerful to see you all, and I'm gonna pass it back over to Donnie.
Thank you so very much, Representative. And right now I have the pleasure of passing it over to Katie and Justin, and they're going to talk about the ballot initiative process.
Go ahead, my friend Justin.
Oh, hi. So hi, everybody. Thanks for being on this call tonight. It's exciting how many folks are on. So my name's Justin. I was part of the 2019 statewide attempt to get this onto the ballot, and I'm going to talk a little bit about things we learned from that campaign. So this is already really exciting, the number of people and infrastructure that exist that did not exist that time around. And so we got a lot of signatures statewide, but not enough to make it on to meet the requirements of the state. And so Massachusetts creates a huge number of barriers for people to incarcerated and non-incarcerated to take part in the political process, which we learned a lot about in this first run that was initiated by Derek Washington with Organizers from Emancipation Initiative. And through this kind of first run, even though we didn't get over the threshold to get enough signatures, we still were able to build a network of volunteers and relationships across the state and organizations who've been dedicated and organizing since then and long before then to get this reinstated. Kind of briefly, some of the big learnings, or at least things that stuck out to me. One was how much support there actually was for signatures, people willing to sign it. And it was something I didn't quite expect. I think doing abolitionist work or criminal justice reform work get used to a lot of discouraging, stigma, dehumanizing responses. And while there were definitely people who were not interested in signing, kind of being out there collecting signatures at different locations, felt overwhelmingly that the biggest challenge wasn't convincing people that this was important, but getting our petition forms in front of enough people. And so it was an issue that could appeal to a broad range of folks we talked to. So anyone from the most sort of radical abolitionist anarchist to reform oriented, someone who just believes voting is important, people were down to sign it. Which meant that kind of one of the biggest challenges that we were up against was this logistic struggle, that we have this very small window, which Katie's going to talk about the pieces to that, basically a very small window to get a paper petition in front of people who are registered voters to sign. You have to get that verified by each town that they're registered to vote in. And so one of the key learnings for me from that was that we just need lots of people who are down to take on lots of different roles. And that included everything from folks who are very sort of outgoing, down to talk to whoever, to collect signatures, to people who are willing to drive these petitions to different town clerks and get them verified, to people who are good with spreadsheets, who could find what time the clerks were open, and all of the various rigmarole that the state puts in front of people trying to get involved. And so I say that one as a learning, but also an encouragement for folks on the call who are interested in getting involved to start thinking about different ways they could contribute. That could be very people centric, or it could be just we had some really amazing people who were just managing the spreadsheets, keeping track of who needed to go where, and then people who were just straight up drivers. And that was amazing. And all of those skills were very necessary and very appreciated. And then I guess just as an example too, to start thinking, actually before I do that, there's a lot of people on that call, and I imagine some of you might have been part of the 2019 ballot initiative process too. So if you wanted to, feel free to put in the chat kind of where you're at or ways that you were involved that could be inspiring for other folks to just see the lots of different ways to get involved. But some of the kind of places we went to were malls, shopping centers, grocery stores, but also concerts, festivals, farmers markets. So anywhere there's a large group of people. My favorite was in Northampton. Some college students from Smith and Amherst in UMass, we organized a door-to-door trick-or-treating canvassing. And so we'd have our costumes on, we go to the door, we knock, they'd open it, expecting children, and it was us with petition forms. And even though they were like, what are you doing? Most of them signed it. And so thinking creatively of ways to reach a lot of people, that really just talking to folks, it was a pretty compelling ask, that people who are incarcerated our members are our communities, are our family members, are our loved ones, our constituents. And if we're in a democracy, they should be able to vote. And if they're not down for it, go to the next one, because there's millions of people in Massachusetts. We only need, what, 80,000? That's it. But we do have to get to them. So I could go on, but I'll pass it to Katie. And just thanks to everyone for being here.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, I was part of the Mass Power campaign in 2019 as well. And one of the things we had gone to a couple haunted houses and like hay rides and stuff to collect signatures, which was super fun. And there were many nights of like just shifting through sheets, organizing them into towns and counties, and lots of laughs with the crew that was helping with that. So there was lots of different roles, but yeah. So my name's Katie Talbot. I'm an organizer with Neighbor to Neighbor and also a part of the No Longer 3/5 Coalition. Rep. Uyterhoeven already spoke a little bit about the process of signature collection. This is a 3-year process of when this question goes on the ballot, but the amount of time that we have to collect signatures is about 2 months. So the groundwork is a tiny fraction of what happens. Next week, we'll be submitting the petition to the Attorney General with 10 signatures with the question that we want to have ballots sheets for. But it's not just 10 signatures. It is a trip to the city clerk to make sure all those signatures have voter registration certificates with them, and then 3 city clerks sign off on it. So lots of obstacles just to get this to the Attorney General's office. Then if everything is in line, it'll be sent to the Secretary of State. We shortly after that will get our signature collection sheets. It'll be boxes upon boxes upon boxes of sheets that we will have to figure out how to distribute across the state. That is where like the importance of driving rules starts right off the rip. And so from, end of September to end of November-ish, we have that window of time to get sheets across the state, get sheets in people's hands, and get those 80,000 signatures. But the truth is that we don't want just 80,000 signatures. We want about 200,000 signatures, because just as much as there's obstacles to get the question on sheets for a ballot initiative, when it comes to counting those signatures, there's many obstacles. I mean, I think it was 14,000 out of the ones we collected last year were thrown out. And we know that city clerks have the discrepancy to discount signatures if the papers are stained or they're wrinkled or it goes in the wrong line. Like lots of little reasons they will discredit a signature. So definitely want to make sure the goal is 200,000 signatures. And then, from the last week before these are due, we start the rush of getting these to city clerks so that they can all get to the Secretary of State's office by the 22nd of November. And then the process that Rep. Uyterhoeven already spoke about this now and needing to go to the legislation in order for them to prove it, to put it on the ballot. So even after the voters of Massachusetts say we want this as a ballot initiative, it has to go back to the State House in order to get approved. And once we make all that happen, we'll start hitting the ground, making sure that we get more than 200,000 people in support of this initiative. But just want to highlight too, like the roles that Justin acknowledged in this. There is a spot for every type of person: introverts, extroverts, folks that know nothing about abolition work, but care deeply about the democratic process. This is it. So I'm really grateful for everyone that is in this webinar and excited about getting to work and making this happen with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie and Justin. Rep. Uyterhoeven, I think I've heard your name pronounced 4 different ways this evening. And I just want to thank you for being here tonight. And most importantly, powerful testimony from our incarcerated brothers and sisters on the inside, Derek and Tamik, for their brave testimony and their sacrifice tonight. Who knows what backlash they will receive tomorrow. So this is why it is so important for your support. Let their sacrifice not be in vain, and help us get this ballot initiative amendment legislation passed. One of the privileges of being a US citizen is having the right to vote. When you take that away, you don't have a voice. When I was incarcerated, I didn't feel like a citizen. I didn't have a voice, but yet when I was released, they had the nerve to call us returning citizens, right? So let's turn this around. And some of our asks tonight are, we are looking for volunteers to across the state who can help us collect over 75,000 signatures, but like Katie said, we need much more than that this fall. There is a rule that you cannot have more than 25% of the signatures come from one county. So we need folks from, as many counties as possible to help us collect signatures. There is a volunteer form on our website. I dropped the link in the chat. And some of the roles that we are looking for, I also just dropped in the chat. You can read them and see where you fit in, see where you want to focus your efforts on. Last, we will be holding a county-based planning meeting in the upcoming months to get volunteers together, to start creating timelines for how we're going to ramp up our network and get boots on the ground that we need to surpass our goal. We need point people from different counties. We'll be reaching out to the volunteers who sign up with meeting information. So make sure you fill out that form. Our next event will take place in person in Eastern Mass, and we'll be sending out information so you can save the date. And I want to turn it back over to Donnie.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Despite prevailing attitudes toward incarcerated people, attitudes that opponents to voting rights restoration will use to discredit our campaign, the history of disenfranchisement makes clear that people in prison want to be politically active and use their voting power not only to bring about much needed legal reforms, but to benefit their communities. We will now turn it over to Derek and Tamik to close us out.
What's something you think the public gets wrong about incarcerated folks?
Well, first and foremost, I feel like they push the dehumanization narrative, and that all incarcerated people fit under this ubiquitous flag of he'll rape you, he'll steal from you, he'll deceive you, he'll kill you. There's really no way to humanize an individual, because the stigma of criminal is an inclusive scar across the face of anybody in these institutions, which is why I emphasize humanization. So the misconception of incarceration is that individuals in here are all just, as Frantz Fanon has said, wretched of the earth. So I feel like until you come in here and actually communicate with people in here via a visit, via an email, via a phone call, like if you're not tuning into how your tax dollar maneuvers throughout the machinery of incarceration, and you see what your tax dollar, how your tax dollar is being used, then how can you even form an educated opinion about an incarcerated person? because that means they're getting all your information from the news vehicles that have an interest in spilling a certain narrative about the individuals who are quote unquote the worst of society.
A lot of people believe that incarcerated citizens are animals, that we don't care about anything, that we don't want to do or be better, that we're all guilty, manipulative, dangerous, etc. And that's how they've been like desensitized when they hear about our struggle. But the truth is most incarcerated citizens do care, and they accept that they've made bad decisions and they're carrying out their sentences. Some of us are actually innocent but lack support and resources to go against the machine of this government. But regardless, most of us want to do better, and we do better. And as a result of the desensitization, a lot of people believe that those incarcerated get what we deserve, like the brutality, the torture, the lack of educational programs, and all the other whole inhumane treatment. But most people fail to consider the fact that this is bad for us that's going back into the community. 90% of incarcerated citizens are not doing life sentences, so they're going right back into society. And the last thing you will want is people being treated like animals, being tortured and physically, mentally, and emotionally abused for years and years, and then just released right back into society. That only makes everything worse in the community. People should want those incarcerated to learn from their worst decisions and learn how to prosper and be productive citizens when they re-enter society. And the only way that that's going to happen is if those incarcerated citizens are allowed to participate in the process that create the laws that's going to make it happen. And so it's incumbent upon us that we do what we have to do to make it happen. So I'm encouraging people to log on to NoLonger3fifths.org, follow us on social media, and learn how to be a part of this struggle and help us with this fight so we can make the community and everybody's situations better.
Excellent, excellent. Right now, we're going to open it up to questions. If you have questions, please put them in the chat.
There are some questions in the Q&A chat as well, just in case, although it looks like some of those have been answered already. Thanks, Danielle.
Yeah, and it's just worth saying, someone had asked us if we could collect online signatures as part of the petition process. Unfortunately, the answer is no. Everything has to be done, you actually have to sign a form. Again, Massachusetts is one of the most difficult states to get a question on the ballot. And this is unfortunately one of the kind of hurdles that we have to overcome. Hence why, as many of you who are interested in collecting signatures across the state, it's really, really important that we hit that mark.
There was a question in the chat. Someone asked, can they access this recording?
Yep, we're going to make the recording available. We're going to get it on our YouTube channel, and then we'll share that out with everybody who registered for this call.
There's a question in the chat, and the question is, will this help people already released from prisons with felonies regain their right to vote? In the state of Massachusetts, once you are released from incarceration, even if you have committed a felony, your right to vote is reinstated. That is one of the misnomers. When I was incarcerated, you'd be surprised how many individuals, like Derek and Tamik mentioned earlier, don't know that. And they emerge from prison and you're so focused on probation or parole, trying to get a job, trying to get back in touch with your family, that the right to vote really isn't important to you. But it should be one of the most important things to someone emerging from prison. And that's one of the things that we want to get the word out.
The fact that the folks that are incarcerated on a felony can't vote adds to that misnomer. And like that, there's some people in Massachusetts that can, some citizens that can, and some that can't. It's very, very intentional in order to make sure certain population and community don't don't voice their opinions and don't push to change the status quo. So, you know, another positive about making sure that everyone in Massachusetts can vote is that we remove that confusion of who and when people are able to vote, cast their ballots. There
Has
was-
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Hannah.
I was just say, voicing this guy here, there's also a question in the chat that says, what are the financial resources for this campaign looking like? / will there be the ability to have paid canvassers / advertisements, etc.? Post that to the group.
We're hoping to, right now, we're asking you guys to share our donate link so that we can make that possible. There is a question that was way back in the chat before. It says about the number of bills before the legislature now on ending life without parole, ending joint venture, the prison construction moratorium. The question is, I wondered if this is typical or if the legislator is more open to the rights of prisoners than previously. I can say this for that question, that since incarcerated and formerly incarcerated leaders like the folks on this call have begun advocating for change and using their voices, not hiding behind that stigma like most when they come home. They don't want people to know they've been incarcerated, or they just want to forget about what happened to them while they endured their incarceration. There are folks that, like us, that are on this call have sacrificed our lives and are stepping up and reliving whatever trauma that we endured for the greater good for those who come behind us. And this has opened the doors for our peers who are coming home.
Thank you,
I see a-
Leslie.
I see another question in the chat. Can you run for office? I'm currently running for city council, and I guess if you have a felony. I would say yes, you can. I know someone who is a state senator that has a felony on his record. I'm not mentioning any names. Let's just say run.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. And there's also a question in the Q&A chat that says, how can we create a way to do more for quality control to oversee the unfair treatment of our brothers and sisters behind the wall? We have to do more. Agreed, Maria.
I don't know. I can answer that. I could say, make sure you vote and you call your legislators and ask them to support legislation that affects change. I don't know if Rep. Uyterhoeven can probably answer better than me.
No, I think that's right. Can people hear me all right? Sorry, I have to step outside the state house. So I think that's right. And I think the other thing that you can do, well, first thing is, yes, please reach out to your legislator and say, hey, there's someone behind the wall that needs help that I'm in contact with. You do, like, we are supposed to represent you, right? And your concerns, and anything that pertains to anyone that is in state custody has our name on it. Like, that institution has our name on it, and every injustice that happens behind the wall has my name on it, and I'm not gonna settle for it. They're not gonna fix that problem. Now, if your legislator does not get back to you, contact me, because I will escalate it. So I know I'm like opening up a lot of cans of worms by saying that, but I will escalate it. So please, like, send it my way. We are trying to build out capacity within the various caucuses, like the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus, as well as the Black and Latino Caucus and the Women's Caucus, to be escalating these issues more systematically. Even though it shouldn't take a legislator to fix it, if we get our attention on it, it puts the DOC on watch. And so it's really important that you really do escalate that. First, again, make sure your legislator's on it. And if you want to CC me, you can CC me and I'll make sure we move it forward. But that's the short answer to that question. And we need to make systemic change as well, because it's true, like Leslie said, You know, like the systemic change problem that you're raising is that we restore the right to vote. Because we would treat people very differently if they had the right to vote behind the wall. And that's part of the problem, is that legislators take that for granted, that these are people that we actually have to work for. So we need to make sure that they're not doing that.
Thank you, Rep. Erica. I do, just for folks, I want to let people know that you can go on to the Mass, I think just mass.gov, or just Google who is my Mass legislator. You can find out who your legislator is, and you can also find all of their emails on the Mass State website. So that is all public information. Let's see. Okay, there's also a question in the Q&A from Nolan. They say, thanks for the responses. I'm sure plenty of thought has gone into this already, but does it make sense to go after the restrictions that make introducing ballot initiatives in Massachusetts very difficult, or is that impossible also?
I can answer that. I think that's a good question to ask, but I think we need this change as soon as we can. So that would be a whole nother process to try to change the ballot question issue. And it is, I will just say, like, to reaffirm your point, that our system in Massachusetts really favors corporations and well-resourced organizations, like for-profit corporations, from putting whatever they want on the ballot, and make it very difficult for people to be able to do that, or, like, you know, for people power to make that happen. It's certainly an issue, but I know that that's an issue we won't be able to resolve in a year or less, right? So we want to get this going regardless of that. And that I think we can definitely, even though there are barriers, I really believe that given what happened last time in 2019, we have the power to get this on the ballot with everyone here. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Can I also say that this campaign the last time around was an amazing educational tool for just how challenging the political system is for people involved in the campaign, for people who are just signing it and they're just like, what? This is what it takes? Like, in doing it, like, you will learn a lot about the Massachusetts political system and how challenging it is, and also like how we can win within it too. But yeah, another plug for getting people involved if they want to know more about this.
Thank you. I'm going to close this out.
All right, we would like to thank everyone for attending tonight. It has been informative, and I know that we're going to make progress moving forward on this very important initiative. I would like to thank all the participants, Justin and Danielle, and Leslie, and Katie, and Erica, and Hannah, and Consuelo, and Bobby, and everyone else that I can't see on my screen. Thank you so much for your participation. I just want to mention, if you didn't know, we have a new Massachusetts Attorney General. Her name is Andrea Campbell. She is phenomenal, and she is for the people. And I know that she would be amenable, you know, to legislation like this, because I've spoken with her. So we definitely want to utilize that in her platform moving forward, just not on this initiative, but on all the concerns that were put in the chat. Thank you so much. And if anyone has any last words, Katie, Leslie, go right ahead.
Decriminalize housing.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for coming and sharing this out. And when this gets posted to our YouTube, like, please keep sharing it out. Keep sharing it out. Half of this battle is just educating folks that this is actually an issue that's going on. So thank you, everyone.
Have
a good night, everyone. Let's
Thank
make it happen.
That's awesome.
So we're not staying to debrief? I don't know. I'm like, are we hanging out? We're good. I'm good. Yeah.
It's like, it's done.
I know. Goodbye. I'm the one usually in meetings that is like, yeah, bye, end meeting for all. Like,
No one can debrief.
yeah, yep, no one can